Hi everyone, welcome back. I am super excited for today's episode as this is sort of a continuation of the last episode that came out, right? Because we're continuing to talk about sound and the many beautiful ways you can connect with sound and just work with sound. And today we have Akasha, who she is such a fountain of feminine wisdom, and you're just going to listen to it in her voice and the way that she speaks about it. She has truly walked the path, and I'm really excited for you all to get to meet her, to get to know her, to maybe connect with her, as she is offering a bunch of very beautiful things that are coming up actually kind of soon. But I'll talk more about that towards the end of the episode on the ending credits. If you are listening to us here on YouTube or whatever other platform you're listening to it or watching this video, make sure that you click like, that you subscribe, that you rate us, you comment. The more that you interact with our content, the easier it is for other people to find these beautiful conversations. And these are risk-free ways for y'all to get a little bit of insight into the spiritual world of things, right? Like all you have to do is just sit here and listen and see if you're called to try it out or not, right? Anyways, besides that, I'm excited for the beginning of this episode. So let's just go ahead and get right into it, y'all. Hello, everyone. In this episode, we have Akasha Devi, who is a sister of mine, and she was also a teacher for me through the Sacred Women's School. Akasha is a pillar of feminine light and wisdom, holding space for many other women to remember their own femininity, sexuality, power, and sacredness. Akasha is a Gong Master and Teacher, having embarked on a path of learning and practice for many, many years, which ended up leading her to having her own facility to train and mentor other people in Miami in Gong medicine and sacred sound for 7+ years. Akasha also has a lot of certifications, y'all. She has a very long journey of training and learning and remembering and relearning the things that she already knew from within her soul, like kundalini yoga, prenatal yoga, Sufi-Zen practices, Marma therapy, aromatherapy, crystal therapy, all the therapies. And even though Akasha has many years of study and a lot of different facets or practices or schools of wisdom, it's very evident that all of this is something that she remembered from her soul. These are seeds that were already planted in her soul. But anyways, I'm super excited to have you here with me today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here too. Very excited to talk and see what comes through today.
Yes, yes. With that being said, the first question that I have for almost everybody is like, what sparked you on your spiritual path and kind of brought you towards sound healing and sacred sound?
Okay, so what sparked me on my spiritual path? That's an interesting question because as a young child, I was very sensitive and I pushed away all spirituality. I didn't have any interest in spirituality, and mostly because the examples I was seeing in front of me just didn't make sense, right? They were either these very dogmatic beliefs or superstitious beliefs, beliefs that just didn't feel connected to something deeper and felt more like very man-made and controlled, or dark things that I saw, people working with energetics, but in more dark ways and feeding into the superstition and feeding into the dogmatic beliefs. And really, as a child, besides also being afraid sometimes of some of these things I was witnessing, it was also, it didn't resonate. I believe that there was something different, and it just didn't make sense. So for the longest time, I pushed spirituality away and didn't come back to it until the signs began to appear on my path, which I'm trying to remember. The first sign was yoga, and I mean a sign literally because this is what I saw. I saw a billboard in my vision that said the word yoga at a time where yoga was not as popular as it is now. And I had heard the word, but I didn't really know what it was. And so I started searching, and it was a time where I was traveling, touring a lot, and there was very little I could find. Like there was no possibility to go to a studio, so I began with a book and looking at the pictures and trying to learn that way until I could actually step my feet into a yoga studio. So this would be, let's say, the beginning of, let's say, the official, you know, path in that sense, like in a more official way. But when I really reminisce, when I really think about, I think that spiritual path was always very alive in my soul, and that's why I couldn't connect to the things that I was seeing. I couldn't connect to that which didn't make sense. And that pushing away of what didn't make sense was already the path. It was already that. For the longest time in my path, I saw that as pushing away the path and not wanting to get involved with spirituality. And then in my maturity on the path, I recognized that that was my way of staying true to the path and of really walking my path. So when did it begin? I don't know, because like you said, I feel very honored that you said what you said, because it is true, and it is what I have uncovered more and more for myself, is that many of these things are not new, you know, and for many of us, they're not new. We are coming into awareness of how old our souls are, you know. It doesn't matter what we look like, and we have walked through many initiations and many things, and this is certainly true to my path. But if we're talking about, you know, literally what happened, I began with yoga, Reiki. So this is like in the very, very beginnings of my path. These were the two modalities that kind of began to open up the space for me to remember, the space for me to explore. And both of them brought to me the sound, because with yoga, when I eventually found, I explore many types of yoga, and when I eventually found kundalini yoga, there was a heavy emphasis on sound. And this is when the gongs appeared to me and really began to speak and tug the strings of my heart and my soul towards that. And my Reiki teacher was also quite interesting, Jessica, because she used to do Reiki and teach Reiki in a very kind of like more untraditional way. And she used a lot of toning. She used a lot of sound with her healing methods. So I didn't realize it then, you know, but she also was an introduction to working with sound, even if it was more through the voice. And then many explorations, because I love learning. I'm an eternal student, and I think mastery comes from that, you know, from this eternal passion to expand. And sound became a big teacher for me. Sound is a big teacher for me, and revealed many of the secrets of the spiritual path to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another beautiful thing, though, that you do is that you do learn a lot, and you also practice. Like, you immerse yourself in the studies that you're curious about. You're like, you go big or you go home. Like, you don't, like, if you're gonna learn about it, you go full in. That way
Yes,
you can fully experience it and then like truly make up your own mind. It's like you're a scientist when it comes to spiritual practices. Like, you go full into it, you commit completely and wholeheartedly to a practice, to a path. So that way you can really make up your mind on like, does this actually like resonate with me, resonate with my practice or not? You know, like, or if it doesn't, maybe what parts of it do feel like I could like look further into, what parts I'm like, I'm just gonna let them go.
yeah.
which
You
is
know, this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is so true. And it's one of the things that I also try to pass on, you know, to the students, to the people who I work with, because practice is the path.
Mhm.
Practice is the path. It's not the goal, right? The goal, the path takes us to a goal that we don't know what it is. We don't know the destination, you know, but because we don't know the destination, we don't really know where we're going. We must be passionate about the path. We must be passionate about the practice. Because otherwise we are trying to understand where it's going to take us before we even offer ourselves fully to the practice. So this is a, you know, in all my teachings, my students, if they're listening to this right now, they'll probably laugh, because in all my teachings, this is one of the things I continue to say, you know, like without practice, without full dedication, full making yourself truly an offering to the practice, there will never be understanding, because you cannot understand a practice before you practice. The
Mhm.
practice is what brings the understanding, the deeper understanding. The practice is what reveals the secrets. The secrets are never revealed before you give yourself, ever. So yes, that is a really important key on the path. And that has guided me very deeply into many, many things.
Yeah, and it's important for yourself, you know? Like sometimes I feel like sometimes when people feel, this is totally off topic, but I feel like sometimes people, when they feel like imposter syndrome, or they're like, oh, like I'm just going with the flow, I'm learning this so I can like do it as a service, like the missing link of you feeling like in your authenticity, and for you to feel that you're genuinely a good facilitator and you get rid of that imposter syndrome, is with the practice. Because once you practice it and you truly embody it, and then you get to that point where everything's revealed to you and you feel comfortable, you feel in union with whatever that path is, then it's going to be received as an authentic teaching. And then not only that, but you're also going to feel good in your heart giving it to other people, or just even continuing to practice it within yourself. um
It becomes a natural extension of you.
yeah.
You don't even think about it anymore. It's just what you are, what you do, because it is real, it's a part of you.
Yeah, it's you, and that's what came with sound. Practice sound.
Yes, yes.
um So it's actually pretty beautiful that the Reiki master that you had utilized toning, because that is totally not traditional when it comes to learning about Reiki. A lot of people that teach Reiki don't incorporate variations of the traditional path.
Yeah,
Um, so it's kind of like a seed was already planted from the very beginning, with your Reiki and even your yoga journey. Because even with yoga too, it's not always, they don't always use chanting. The yoga studio that I go to, they don't utilize chanting at all. It's always just the practice of the asanas, like the poses. Um, but they led you towards sound. They instilled the seed of sound. So then with that, how did that evolve from the first exposure of sound for you to be at this place now where sound is one of your master teachers?
yeah, yeah. So I believe the seed was already planted, right? And these experiences were were tugging the strings, you know, the sprouts to come out. And this is what's so beautiful, when we can walk the path, really feeling deeply what our heart desires, you know, because the gong was really what called me very powerfully, you know, from almost the first time I heard it, I was blown away. And most people are blown away because it is a powerful instrument, but there was something in me that was like, I need to have that. Like that needs to be in my hands, that needs to be in my life. I need to learn. Like there was um, almost like an immediate obsession about it that I couldn't even explain. I purchased my first gong after a little bit of this, of course they're not cheap usually, so it takes some time to like go, what what do you want? A singing bowl is much cheaper, but yeah, I wanted a gong. And so I got my first gong, and I was watching whatever YouTube video I could find, one of those things, because this is what we do in the beginning. We're just so desperate, that it's like anything will do. And but I knew I wanted a teacher, because this is also something that is powerful for me in my path. I believe it's because I do carry that archetype of the teacher, and so it goes both ways, right? I wanted to study deeply with someone who really knew, and so it took me about a year or so to find my teacher, and I worked with him. I worked with him deeply for about a decade, a couple of 2 or 3 years while I was in the beginning of my training. And once I moved to Miami and I began to do events here, I began to be approached by people, and especially kundalini teachers, who felt like they never had really heard the gong play in this way. It felt special to them, and this was how the first student approached me, because her words to me was like, I never heard the gong played like that before. I used to hate the gong, and I actually enjoyed it in this event that I did. And so will you teach me, right? So this is where I had the opportunity to step into this, and so it became a long journey teaching and mentoring, really mentoring, because the program was a program that was minimum a year, that people would spend with me, and many of the students spent multiple years studying deeply the gong, and they are all over the place. Some are very deeply committed as healers, as teachers, and others are do it just for themselves, but it was a call in that regard also. But so the gong really was what pulled me into sound healing, and from there, of course, from my teacher, I learned not just the gong, I learned many other instruments. And I, like you said, I really dedicated through all these years of really deep practice, deep study, because also as I was teaching and witnessing others on the same journey, my learning, my practices were also deepening, because I needed to support them with my own authentic knowing. So it was really a period of immense growth for me. The time where the gongs were really, really showing me the way to deep spirituality, and not only through the aspects of sound healing that we know, but also through the tantric path, and so much that can be applied to this relationship with the instruments and with the gong. So my journey with the sound instruments was not a purely scientific sound and healing. This, is what it's good for. That it was a very different thing. Thankfully for my teacher who exposed me to that, and to the teacher within me that took that to a very, very deep level, because that guided so much of how I explore the spiritual path.
Yeah. Could you describe like what it was like when you
felt or when you heard the gong that called you so hard? Like, did you go to like a sound bath? Did you go to a
Yeah, because in Kundalini Yoga, most classes will have a lot of teachers in Kundalini Yoga play the gong, and they play the gong at the end of the class during Savasana. And so once I started practicing Kundalini Yoga, I started experiencing that. And then there were some specific events that were mostly with the gong, with the sound bath, and it was just a feeling of deep longing, deep desire for that. I needed to have a gong. I needed to explore that. I don't even know how to explain. It's like when you meet someone and they're kind of cute and they're kind of charming, and you don't know why the hell you become so obsessed about that person, and all of a sudden you are in love, right? And it was kind of that. There's no rational explanation, but it's a feeling inside. And in the spiritual path, really connecting to the longings that we feel inside it's very important, because they guide us, and this is the difference between the different paths sometimes, is that we have gone, there's not to distract us from the subject, but this is an important thing. When we spend a lot of time with certain spiritual practices that keep telling us desire is something to get rid of, and desire is a bad thing, and we must be desireless. Yoga has a lot of that, in the yanas and jnanas, and the thing is that, yes, there is desire. Desire causes a pulse, a wave in the field, right? So even if we're speaking of sound, if we're speaking of the silence field, the desire is going to create a wave. But this is what this world is. Waves upon waves. And we could say we are manifestation of desire in some way. And without that, nothing happens. So one thing is our shallow desires, our desires that come out of almost boredom, the desires that come because we see no meaning in life most of the time, it's like, what? So we want this, we want that, but there is something that perhaps, just for the sake of clarification, we can call it longing.
Yeah.
And it's a longing that comes deeply from a place in your heart that you cannot even identify, a longing that comes from deep within your soul. These types of desires are creative. These types of desires are guidance on the path. And learning to listen to them, and learning to trust them, and learning to let them guide you on the path, it's one of the first things we must learn to really enter, to really step on a path. So that's the feeling. To answer your question, that's the feeling. It was just something beyond me. It was something I needed to do. And clearly now, more than a decade later, I can say, yes, I needed that. I needed to go through that, because it was an acceleration of my path that who knows if it would have happened otherwise.
Yeah. And the gong is such a powerful instrument. I think the first time that I did sound healing in the way that we think about it today, with like sound bowls or whatever, it was at some festival that I went to in Apopka. It's like this vegan festival. And then there was a woman that was doing like Reiki sound healing, like combined for donations, and the donations were going to go to this little like place where they were saving kitties and adopting kitties and all this cute stuff. So I was like, I've been very curious about this. I'm just going to go for it. I went for it. I guess she felt called to share with me the gong, and she pulled it out because it wasn't a part of like the little session. Like she had it away. She's like, would you want to feel what it's like? And I was like, yeah, I'm already here. Let's go for it. When she played that gong, oh my God, I don't think I've ever in my life have been able to feel something similar as that. And it only happens with the gong. And then the other time that it was close to that was when I've put my own Himalayan bowls on my body, and like after like some time then I can get to that same state. But when she played the gong instantly, I was within my body, I was within my heart, I was within my soul. And I never felt something like that. And there was another time that I went to another event and they just so happened to also have the gong. I didn't know they were going to pull it out. And I was like, yes, oh my God, yes. So then they pulled out the gong, and it's just the best way that I can describe it is very ethereal, but in your inner landscape. I love the gong. It's great. But talking about instruments and the gong in and of itself, and you working with the gong, you mentioned how there's also other instruments that you've learned to play with. Would you like to share like what other instruments you use, which ones do you usually go to and for what, and what's your connection with all those different things?
Yeah, I mean, my deepest connection is the gong. Let's say that's my specialty. That's what I do most, and to accompany that, and in the healings, when I do private healings or when I do events, often I may accompany that with the singing bowls, of course, crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, tuning forks. And tuning forks, you have the ones that are mostly for listening, and the other ones that are more for placing in the body. There's like two types of tuning forks. Chimes, bells, tingsas, like anything. Of course, the shamanic drum, but that is also like a different feeling, very different feeling. But they can be incorporated together, sure. And yeah, as far as the healing, sound healing, those would be the main instruments. And then of course, I bought a flute in Peru, so sometimes I use that, but I'm not a musician, and this is it's a different way of connecting with the instruments, also because in the space of sound healing, we are, like you said, we're working with sound in a more abstract and ethereal way that doesn't necessarily require, let's say, high levels of musicianship, as if you were to want to play a saxophone or so it's a different thing. But I think you connect with the sound, and you connect the main thing is like the sensitivity of the player, and to connect with that. So those are the instruments mostly I would use, like like a normal sound healing. One is most commonly known. And there is a difference, even, there's a difference in the way musicians approach the instruments. And there is a difference also in the way different sound healers will approach the instruments, because some in the beginning of their path are more focused on working with the instruments, discovering the power of these instruments and how beautiful they are. And it becomes a more performative practice. And more focus on, let's say, the health benefits, and because it does, there are so very powerful effects that we can feel physically nervous system, in our, like you said, they physically can ground you, they ground you and lift you at the same time. Especially the gong has a powerful way of doing that. And then, but not all sound healers are necessarily on a spiritual journey, on a spiritual path. They're not necessarily connecting with it from deep spaces, so there are differences. And it's not like you hear that so much on the sound, but you hear that and you feel that in the difference in the energetic transmissions that you are receiving, because that is also present in the sessions. It's the energetic transmission. But where are you transmitting from, and what level of consciousness you're transmitting from? So my connection with the instruments is from that space, of where these sounds are coming from, not just the physical instruments, but something deeper.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you said regarding different sound healers and the different paths that they take. Because you are right. There's some sound healers that are there to just promote like wellness, right? And how to help someone relax and come to themselves. And that is not a space where you might feel like you're just floating through space with like the gong, right? Like if you're trying to relax, even though the gong can definitely, I'm sure you can do a little pattern and connect with it in a way to just promote wellness for someone. The gong is very powerful, extremely powerful. And I feel like it's a lot more connected to expanding spiritually. Anyways.
Yeah, that element of wellness will always be present. That's the first layer. And then, but then there are deeper layers to work with the instruments. There are many deeper layers, but it depends. Each sound healer is going to give from where they're at. And there's nothing wrong with the wellness aspect of it, because it's very needed. People need to relax. This is really, most people need, and a lot of healing comes from that space when they finally give themselves permission to just let go. It's amazing how much healing only that can do. So there is absolutely need and space for that. And there are deeper layers, but again, each person chooses a path, or some people choose a path, other people are not necessarily on a path, so it's as a spiritual path. That's what I mean. And so this is, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. And the wellness aspect it's like almost the first layer to crack, and it will always be there. That part is always there. It's like wine will always give you a little buzz, like it doesn't matter how aged it is, or this was a thing my teacher used to say all the time about the gong. It's like, doesn't matter who's playing what gong or whatever, you always get a buzz. So that part is always present, because they are powerful instruments. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do that, right? Like I haven't gotten to the point where I provide sound healing in that way, but I have every now and then. Whenever someone approaches me, there's a person that I know, she has her own like hair studio, and I bring sound healing bowls with me just to talk to her. And she's like, "Oh, just come, bring them with you." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I bring them to give massage, because I am a massage therapist, but I don't like using my hands because I'm tiny, I'm not strong, so it hurts me. But the sound bowls with the vibration, I do feel like it's helped with the wellness aspect, the physical aspect of things. So I like using that. I've used that on myself and my husband. And I brought them, and then this person came in one day and was like, "I'm curious. Let's see if this actually works." And then it does. And because I just did it because of his shoulder pain, and then it actually helped him relax his shoulder pain in 5 minutes versus him getting a home massage for like 30 minutes or an hour, that right there, physical wellness, not spiritual at all, probably planted a seed And let's see how that flourishes for that person later on.
Yeah. I mean, these things, this is healing, you know, and it's good. It's all good. Yeah. There is really a room for all of that, for all of these things. It's not, yeah.
We need them all. We need all of it.
We need them all. We do.
Yes.
All the colors.
All the colors of the rainbow.
Yes.
So I wanted to also ask you, if you're willing to share of any of the journeys that you've gone through with sound, per se, whether it's you practicing it within yourself, like self-practice, or you going to somebody else's event where they're facilitating, like, do you have any experiences of remembrance or insight that just helped you give you more clarity or coming more into your authentic self with sound?
Yes. I don't know if I can recall specifically what these journeys have been, but that has been my journey, you know, through really meditating with sound, because this is where it crosses over to the spiritual practice, you know, is when your practice with sound becomes really a practice of meditation, a practice of connecting deeper, a practice of opening deep spaces. And so there in those spaces, sometimes there's a lot of silence, sometimes there's a lot of insights, sometimes there's a lot of answers, sometimes there's a lot of magic, you know, there's a lot can happen in those spaces where, you know, even with clients and students, like I've witnessed people, you know, go on journeys through the sound. And of course, you know, it depends, because the sound itself can carry you, you know. And here again, there's so many layers to this, because the sound itself can carry you to different dimensions. It can absolutely do that. And gongs are powerful portals of let's say interstellar traveling. Yeah. And then of course, when the practitioner is also working energetically to open these portals and to then the experience can even be enhanced, like it would be if you're sitting with a shaman, right? Like that presence, that calling, that the energetic work that the shaman is doing opens up spaces in your psyche, even though they may not even be touching you or doing anything, but their voice, their chants, their, you know, they are doing energetic work that opens up certain spaces. So I have experienced this with people I've facilitated for, through the energetic spaces that I can open in, because I meditate and I can open these spaces with the gongs for myself. Yeah, and this is always the journey. You have to go on that journey first before you can facilitate it for someone else. Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I've had, like I said, when I say the gongs and sound has been my teacher, this is what I mean. Is that in that space of deep practice, and by deep practice, I don't mean the techniques, I mean deep meditative practice with the instruments, with the gongs, with the sound. Deep wisdom has been revealed in those spaces, you know, where I really received a lot, not just information, but experiences, visions, and different things.
Yeah, it's
so
like that playful practice, the experimenting.
Yeah, it is an experimenting. The spiritual path is an experimenting, because there's no guarantees in that path, but so it is always an experimenting. But it's dedication, is devotion, is your willingness to go deep, you know, to really want to go to the depths of your being. And sound is one of the vehicles that can bring us very deep. But again, not just on its own, right? Your dedication, your practice must be present for that. So yeah, those spaces definitely open when we are in meditation, and then the vehicle for meditation can be, different.
Yeah. I love how it's not only instruments that you work with, but also your voice and also silence, right? Um, I don't know which one you would like to talk about first, like voice or silence, but I would love for us to be able, or for you to expand on both of those when it comes to sound.
Mhm, mhm. Silence is key. Yeah, silence is primordial. Silence is where sound comes from. Silence, without silence, there's no sound. Um, it is born from there and it dies there. Every sound wave. And so the practitioner's connection to silence is key for their connection to sound. Yeah, there needs to be a deep inner silence for you or anyone, right? To be able to deeply connect with sound. Because that silence is where you will receive the sound in your being. Without that silence, sound cannot enter you. So again, the practice of the practitioner and the deepening of their capacity to create silence within, deep meditation, this is key to really be able to understand and connect with sound at deep levels, and levels that can actually bring deep experiences and healing. So silence is a key element to sound. With that said, that can bring us to the voice, because even though I learned toning from my Reiki teacher in the very beginning of my path, and I actually did enjoy a lot there, and I could sense, because we would use toning to move the energy, the Reiki energy, and it was very powerful. I did not use toning so much in my sound healing sessions. Because of this reverence and respect for silence, right? So much that all my clients would say, "You move like a cat." I don't know where you are in the room, and all the gongs are playing, and like I don't know where you are, because I was always very silent, and I always felt like I had to be very silent and just allow the instruments to speak. I was very good at that. And more recently, with the more, let's say, shamanic trainings I started receiving, and that began to open up a call to use more my voice. I had been told this by a few people in the past, like, people sometimes have like psychic insights, and they would say, you need to use your voice. And I'm like, okay, but it never really clicked. But because in these practices, we were using so much the voice, and we entered the practice of toning again. So that remembrance started coming back. And I just remember there was one session where I was being very quiet as usual, because I doing hands-on healing, and then the sound, and all of a sudden, like, I had to tone, I had to use the voice, and I knew it wasn't an option. Like, I knew I just had to do it. So I turned off the little soft audio track I had on, and I started doing that very timidly, because it felt like I was disrupting the environment, So once I opened that, the floodgates opened. and to a point where I can barely do a session without toning anymore.
Mm.
You know, after a few years now of opening that up, it's just, it's there. And what has opened up for me with a voice, because I would do toning in my own meditation practices, in my own work and with myself. And what that opened up was I can really feel, and it opens my vision to really see how energy is moving. And I could sense, as I was practicing toning, and I could visualize and see and sense energy moving, and the visions that would come as I was toning, and like so much magic would start happening. And so once I allow myself to do that for others too, it became really like a gate, like a floodgate, you know, that open, because I have visions, and sometimes the person will have very similar visions, you know, of what the energy is doing, or specific visions for the journey that they are on during the healing. So it is a relatively newer thing, even though it was one of the first things I've learned.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny, but I didn't use it in this setting as much. And again, it was when I started practicing for myself and understanding what was happening energetically when I used my voice, I could open that for my healing sessions.
Yes. And for the
Yeah.
people that are listening that are not sure what toning is or what you mean by that, could you explain what toning is for them?
Yes, so toning, you're using your voice, creating sounds, but it's not singing, right? We're not singing any scale, we're not singing any specific thing. There's no words necessarily, there's sounds, very simple sounds, you know, a lot of vowel sounds, a lot of, you know, what you would call primordial sounds almost, you know. And you just allow that to be a spontaneous happening. Initially, what happens when we begin exploring that is a lot of clearing, a lot of cleansing of the throat chakra, you know, a lot of, so initially the work is cleansing our own energetic field. And then the toning begins to take a more spontaneous shape. And of course, it depends on your own meditative practice and where you are, your intention, and where you are placing that intention, and how you are focusing on that intention. You can, it begins to take a life of its own. To me, and this is how I practice, right? Because maybe different people practice toning in a different way. I know some people practice toning with very specific sounds, and that can also be done. I mean, even in the practice of Qigong, they use this, you know, specific tones that activate specific chakras and energy centers and energies for you. So there's a lot of ancient science about tones, about the voice and the tones that you can create with the voice in shamanic teachings also, you know. But here I'm speaking more of a very spontaneous practice where we connect really with the movements of energy that are happening in the moment, and we can collaborate with that energy, not just with our voice, but with our vision and with our intention. And then healing can come from that. You know, you co-create with the spontaneous energy. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So you have 3 different courses or trainings or mentorships that you offer. You have a mini course that's like a 7-day activation of your own sound. You also have like the foundations of sound course as well, and then you have that mentorship if anybody is interested in like gong medicine. So within that or outside of that, like how can people connect with you? How can people work with you in person, virtually, if they're very interested in expanding their journey with sacred sound?
Yeah, so the offering that is most alive right now is the mentorship.
Mm.
And that is usually one-on-one, or if I have a small group of people that want to work together, I do that also, but mostly has been one-on-one lately. This could be done online or in person. It depends if somebody is in Miami or not. Yeah, because I'm based in Miami. So for students that are in Miami, they come here and practice here. Otherwise, other students, they practice online. And this program is really to take the practitioner to a deeper level with their connection to sound, really moving from the space of sound healer, right, to a space of a practitioner of sacred sound, right? A practitioner, someone who is dedicated to meditation, someone who's dedicated to letting the instruments take them really deep on their self journey. The reward of that is, yes, your skills grow, they expand, because your connection with these instruments is so strong, you know, your intimacy with the instruments is so strong. So of course your capacities as a sound healer, as a practitioner of sound healing, they grow, they expand. Yet the intention for joining a program like that would be really to deepen your own path, to deepen your own self, your own connection to the instruments, to sound, understanding the deeper layers of sacredness that lie behind these instruments and the sound. So that is the offering that is most alive right now. Foundations of Sacred Sound is an introductory course that I teach, but it's not scheduled right now. I might be scheduling another one soon, but this is something I offer once in a while, in attempts to also prepare people to the deeper journey with the mentorship, because this is where I really love to walk with people. It's in their journey of deepening their path, and with the support of sound, and deepening their capacity to hold really beautiful sacred space with sound. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Is there anything that you like to share for someone that is listening to this and they're curious about working with sound and deepening maybe their own practice at home? Like any advice that you might have for someone?
Yeah, listen to the call. That would be my first advice. Listen to the call. You may not be able, you know, sometimes you're not able to go get the gong or get a singing bowl, get something. Listen to the call and see, and explore the instrument at the same time that you explore meditation. You know, enter into, let the instruments help you go deeper in meditation. Don't be so much in a hurry to develop skills, because honestly, all these instruments are not that hard to play. Yeah, they're not that hard to play. What is hard is to hold a cohesive field while you're playing, because these are instruments that open up deep subconscious spaces. Yeah, and if you are not used to navigating those spaces, and if those spaces are not clear, the space that you're holding won't be very clear either. So go on the journey with the instruments and let the instruments show you how to go deeper and deeper into meditation. Use the instruments for yourself and go deep. And the next step will show up, because it always shows up on the path. When you take the first step, the next step reveals itself. We cannot know what lies way ahead of us. We will never know. But all we can do is, like the card that you pulled earlier, leap. Yeah, she pulled a card for us. So
For anybody that's watching the YouTube video.
that's the advice. Leap. Take the first leap, and then the next step is revealed. And you take that step, and then the next step. This is how we walk on the path. And if you're really into it and you want to call me and you want, we can work deeper for sure. But there is no reason why you can't just begin even with a singing bowl or a simple tuning fork and let the sound carry you, not far away, deep within. Deep within.
Love that, going within.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you?
Yes, okay. So my website is portalsofakasha.com. And there you will see all my offerings, everything, or on Instagram and Facebook, also Portals of Akasha. And you will see my sound offerings, my tantric mentorship offerings, and also feminine alchemy offerings. Yeah. And you can email me through the website also.
Right, perfect. So I'll have the link for the website, the Instagram, and Facebook on the show notes for those of you that are curious and wanting to connect and learn more. So check them out in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much.
So many beautiful things that have been said.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to go on and on.
Yeah, I mean, girl, you have so much wisdom, and like what you're sharing is not only something that is empowering for people to hear, but it's also very true, because a lot of people are desperate. They're like, I want to learn more, I want to consume more, I just want to be perfect, or I want to do something great, I want to hold that space. And what a lot of people don't get told is that you have to practice in a way that's more playful or meditative, to go inwards instead of to go outwards. And it might be because of capitalism. So like, keep buying courses, but it's like, it's not, the mentorship is one thing, and like a course is another thing. And they both have, their time, their space, their pros and cons. But what you're offering and the space that you offer and the things that you share is very empowering for someone to really take accountability for their own experience, and for them to make sure that they figure out what they should and should not do in alignment with who they are, right? And the same thing comes with sound. So a lot of the things that you shared were not only very insightful to the practice of sound, but also very empowering for anybody listening that's just kind of like in a rush, and it's like, just practice by yourself.
Yeah. And there's no rush, because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
There is nowhere to go. It's an infinite journey. It never ends. Yeah. Thank
That's
you.
the beauty of life. Of course, of course.
Something that we didn't mention at the end of the episode is that Akasha is going to have the ascension process of Venus from the underworld to the upper world through a 9-month container called the Mystery of the Rose. I have the link for that below if you're curious to learn more about that, as well as the other links that were mentioned for you to connect with her through Instagram, Facebook, her website, and her mentorships. I'm super happy that you guys made it all the way to the end of the episode. If you feel like somebody would enjoy this conversation about sound, make sure that you share it with someone, and make sure that you give us a like and subscribe, so that way you can be in the know for any future podcast episodes that we have here on YouTube. Thank you, y'all. Until next time.